This is Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield, a podcast that resources families and friends with tools to have important conversations about mental and emotional health. This show is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Centers, helping you find clarity, hope, and purpose. Here's your host, Trever Shirin.
Thank you for joining us on Candid Conversations. I'm Trever Shirin, joined as always by Dr. Mayfield,
who's not awake yet.
But we have coffee in front of us.
We have coffee, and we're working towards some really good cinnamon rolls later here.
Yep, rewarding ourselves.
For those of you who aren't in Colorado, it's finally fall here, and I woke up this morning going, I just want to stay in bed. It's foggy and misty and 38 degrees.
If there's ever a reading day.
Oh, man.
Today was it.
You know, for those of you that listen in the South, I'm sorry. You're waking up to like 90 degrees. My sister-in-law keeps on telling me that she's really jealous because, you know, it's fall here, and you know it gets down to 70, 72 at night in Louisiana.
Ugh,
you know,
yuck.
It's not fall. Like their fall's like December.
Can't grateful to live in Colorado, but if you're thinking about moving here, consider Pueblo instead, because the Springs is
expensive,
full.
Yeah, the Springs is full. Yeah.
Today we're talking about this concept of why it's never too late. So let's unpack that just a little bit. Dr. Mayfield, when we say that, what initially comes to your mind?
It's like a Mad Libs, fill in the blank. Never too late for paying bills. No, I get late fees on that one. No, it's interesting that you say that because I was meeting with I teach at a university here in town, and in the master's department, and I have a plethora of age groups, and so I've got some students that feel like it's almost too late and they're 38, and I've got other students who feel like it's almost too late and they're 68.
Right.
And I think that's a cool visual that this individual, you know, I've had many students that are in their late 50s, early 60s. They're like, no, it's not too late. I don't want to be sitting on my hands, retired,
right,
doing nothing, until I'm 80. So I'm going to get my master's degree in counseling, and I'm going to give back and work and enjoy.
When I even think about Clark Maxon, a friend of ours who is in the cohort after mine right now, and he just recently retired from school administration
for like 28 years,
28 years or the full 30 or something. Like I think he did the full 30. And is now getting his degree to do counseling because he realized that a lot of the work that he started doing later in his career was geared towards some of the counseling, and that he would be able to have a big impact on teens and by doing counseling. And so I think even from that educational point, it's really encouraging to see that in a lot of ways, like it really isn't too late to go get a degree and change your career and do something that you feel called to do.
But it's interesting too, because I think, we see this throughout our culture that there are these not misnomers, but like expectations put on people that you have to hit certain milestones at certain points in your life, and
you should be done with your bachelor's degree by 22.
Right. And
if you're not,
then you're not gonna. What's the point? Or you should be done with this by this time, and this by this time, and you should have this much in savings and this much in and then drive this. And I'm like, who says?
Right.
And that's why I love kind of those trailblazers or those people that think outside the box, going, no, I might have been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years because that's what I was called to, but now my kids are grown, and I've always wanted to be X, and I'm going to go back to school because it's never too late. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But we see this all the time in counseling too, right? Where we think we have clients come in that the problem they feel like has been going on for so long that it's too late. You can't fix me, can you?
Right.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to fix you, but but no, it's not too late. It's not too late to improve your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your physical health.
Yeah.
How many people do you see that are, later on in life that are frequenting the gym and are probably in better shape than you and I are sitting here right now? So
I'm even thinking about our Erickson stages of development conversation and how I'm pretty sure we mentioned in there some form of this concept that even if you haven't hit the next stage of development and you're supposed to, that doesn't say anything wrong about you. There might be a trauma that has delayed you that you can work through, but that doesn't mean that you can't move to the next stage, or that it's too late to continue.
Right.
And yet that kind of seems to be the pervasive thought in our culture, is that, too late.
Yep.
Figure out how to live in this current environment because you're stuck.
Well, I mean, look at media, the access to media. I mean, Google's been around for 20 some odd years, iPhones for 12. I mean, the access that we have to information is just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And so it could be a catch-22. In some ways it's really good. In other ways, I lose muscle mass by age 35, so what's the point of working there? Or, this website says I need to do this or that, or, and it's so much information. It's so confusing that I think we in some ways abdicate our role to the ethos of going, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to give up. It's too late for me in whatever that looks like. Yeah. And, I think, if we want to pick up on some of the things we've talked about in past episodes, that's a fixed mindset right there.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where I'm at, what I have going on for me, where, all those kind of things is the best it's going to get.
Yeah.
Where the flip side is, let's try something new. Let's do...
Yeah. And I think maybe in this episode we can challenge some of those thoughts too, because I'm even thinking about how, my view of what marriage looks like and how marriage counseling works, and thinking about, is there a point where it's too late in a marriage if both people are willing to do something?
No. And I cannot tell you. So this is one of the joys of working and running a counseling center like Mayfield Counseling, is when we have our team meetings, we have moments where we share just awesome stories from it's all confidential, but it's awesome stories in our team meetings about these breakthrough moments. And we've got several marriage counselors on our staff, but one that constantly shares stories is Erin Smalley, and the fact that she's got clients that and again,
in the twilight years.
You're right, yeah, very generic. I'll make it very generic just for the sake of confidentiality, but that came in going, this is our last shot. We're giving this a try. We've been married for X amount of years, and, we feel like divorce is the only option, but we thought we'd come and give it one more shot. And the hard work and the fact that they're both willing to have some flexibility and that kind of stuff. And just, 10, 15, 20 sessions later, they're, just better than they ever were.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's ever too late, but there are points where you're flirting with it.
Yeah. Definitely.
I mean, I talk about this all the time in my community talks, that when we talk about the topic of suicide, that it's almost too late.
Yeah.
It's not too late, but it's almost too late, right, where we need to be talking about mental health ahead of time. Same thing with divorce, it almost too late, but it's not too late, right? So I think it's our language and our mindset that really plays into whether or not there is movement beyond that statement.
Well, and I think also, like, we talk about deathbed confessions and things like that, and I think there's a very therapeutic aspect to those situations where it's the things that we wish we would have processed earlier on that we don't have the time for anymore. And so before it is too late and we're not alive anymore, we want to be able to get this out and to work through it. And so even being able to take that perspective, even at the last minute of your life, it's not too late until your life is over. And so there's the benefit of, hey, instead of maybe doing this in the last minute of your life, maybe what would it look like to take one small step towards that today?
Well, and this is where this is a counseling podcast. We're talking about through those kind of things. I've challenged numerous clients to do their deathbed confession. So two ways, and then for those listening, it does sound a little bit morbid, but just go with me for a second. But it's writing your obituary. From perspectives of a spouse, from a child, from a best friend, from the community. What would you want them to say about you at your funeral?
The nihilist in me really likes that activity.
Yeah, well, but then you backtrack and go, okay, then how should I live?
Yeah.
How do I want to live? How do I want my kids to experience me and they're only 5 years old right now? Or how do I want my wife to experience me or my husband to experience me, but we've only been married for 10 years? Right. And so it gives you a chance to go, it takes that too late or, out of the picture. But then I think in some ways too, it's like this then it's writing these deathbed confession type of things now.
Right.
And playing around with it. Is there anything that you need to work through, deal with, or explore when you have time?
Yeah. I was just watching a TED Talk about a 75-year study on these men from Harvard and Brooklyn. And they studied them every year and asked medical questions and went in their house and did interviews. And what they were trying to find was what really makes a satisfying life. And what they found was it was the relationships, and that the individuals with stronger relationships, right? For us, right? The individuals with stronger relationships lived longer and were healthier, and they found strong correlations to holding on to bitterness and anger or frustration or being in relationships that were poisonous, and health problems and dying younger and not being satisfied with life. And he ended it with a Mark Twain quote that I am absolutely going to butcher. But essentially what he was saying was, there's not enough time in life for us to be bitter and angry. There's not enough time for arguments and for conflict. There's only barely enough time for love.
Says the bitter, angry novelist.
Right. Right. Coming from him.
Yeah. If you read his story. Interesting.
He means something.
Didn't take his own advice.
No. And I think oftentimes we don't, but that's another conversation for another episode.
Oh man. But I think that's very, very, very true. And it's funny because we spend so much time trying to find the fountain of youth, and we try to find all these things that would make us stay young longer and healthy and all that kind of stuff. And it boils down to deal with your own crap so that you can be a better friend, a better spouse, a better parent, and be in a more genuine relationship. And if that's it, why aren't we all doing it?
Well, I think I have the answer to that, because it requires vulnerability. I'm stealing from Brene Brown.
We need to, hashtag.
Hashtag Brene Brown's the best. It's vulnerability, because in order to have a really healthy relationship and to engage with somebody authentically, we have to be willing to be vulnerable, and that hurts.
It does. Well, it does, and it requires something from us. And in a culture that wants to find the easiest way around things, instead of going through, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And yet our medical expenses are higher than they've ever been. The fact that, and I say this all the time, if we can work ourselves out of a job as a therapist, as a counselor, I would love that.
We'll go sell ice cream.
But or coffee or whatever. but therapy costs are higher than they've ever been. Pharmaceutical costs are higher than they've ever been. And so it's like, if we know these things and it just takes some work to be vulnerable, I just scratch my head.
Yeah.
And so for those listening, it's not too late if you're listening, to go, okay, do I need to go see a counselor? Do I need to reevaluate my relationships? Do I need to reevaluate myself and how I am operating in this world?
Yeah.
I mean, a different study showed that, was it in the upper 90s percentage of people in an oncology ward back east had unforgiveness and bitterness.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that unforgiveness and bitterness cause cancer, but there's because everything causes cancer nowadays, I guess. Right. But there's that correlation to when we hold on to these things of unforgiveness and bitterness, or we're in a poisonous relationship, or we're struggling with our thought processes or whatever, an outlook, that it does something to our physiology, which then does something to this, does something to that. Then now we have cancer, or we have autoimmune disease, or we have.
Yeah. And in my own life, I know that I'm very susceptible to bitterness. And it's really easy for me to hold on to something and just let it grow and fester. And through the years, I've had to find ways to let that go and to work through it. And I know that it's so hard, but I also know that me being able to let go of the bitterness of something that happened 5 years ago now is really not much different in the process than it would have been 4 years ago. or 5 years ago when it happened. The process really doesn't change that much, except it may be a little bit bigger in the way it's affecting me.
Right. Or how we see it. I think that's, so it's like a step process of this is I think the first one is the awareness. Mm-hmm. We have to be aware of how we are interacting in the world. And a lot of times I think our self-awareness struggles or is skewed based on experience, based on, that feedback loop of, and so asking the question, and as therapists, we joke about this, but, okay, Trevor, how are you experiencing me today?
Right.
Or how have you experienced me over the last couple of weeks? And we get that feedback, and it seems corny.
Yeah.
But it's like, how else are we going to get that feedback? Because unless we're in a relationship where we have really a good feedback loop,
right?
Like, okay, Mark, you're being a jerk today. Stop it. Oh crap, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was being sharp or harsh or whatever. Yeah. Most of us don't have that,
right?
So we need to go look for it and go ask. And a lot of times that's a therapist.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, we keep coming back to it. And if you're frustrated by this is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Center.
That's probably why you should go to a therapist if you're frustrated by this.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just keep looping it back. I think that so often we come to a point where it feels like it's too late just because it feels like it's too much.
Too big, too heavy, too...
Yeah, and it's not even a timing thing. It's just that it's grown so big that how can I do anything? And I think in those moments when we feel really overwhelmed by either our situation or how our personality or ourselves are functioning in the world, it can be really invaluable to be able to go to a counselor and help break it down into what's the next step.
Well, I'm following up on a phone call today with I'll again make it very vague, but an individual that is wanting to come see me because they just want to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sweet.
It's a beautiful thing.
It might only be 5 or 6 sessions. That's not a big deal. Right. And then we'll just be on this, hey, come check in every quarter or something like that. That's what we're talking about. And for those of you that feel like you have a past, a childhood, a marriage, an experience, a trauma that just feels insurmountable, you're not coming into therapy to fix it in one day.
No.
And finding a good therapist, which you can call us to help you find a good therapist, because we might not be the best fit,
totally.
But is going, okay, somebody that's going to be patient with me, somebody that's going to walk with me through this, somebody that's going to challenge me and not just walk away with coffee talk. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come in and going, man, I wasted 2 years with that therapist because they made me feel good every time I left, and you've challenged me in 6 weeks, and now I'm, So I think it's finding the right fit.
Yeah.
Go back to our episodes, the beginning of season 1, talking through that. But no, it's my wife always said that her dad or her grandfather always would say, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, which is, I don't know where we get these, isms in our culture. But when you tackle a problem, it's not going to be, okay, I'm in and I'm going to do the hard work in an hour and a half and be fixed. It's going, let's lay out a game plan. So first step is to be aware. Second step is to take action in some way. Yeah. And third is realize that it's a process.
Yeah.
And that phrase for the title of this podcast, it is never too late.
Right.
Period. Like, unless, this sounds really morbid, but unless they're lowering you into the ground.
Right.
Right? It's not too late.
Totally. And I think we did our grief episode. We talked about my views that we're all going to die one day. And it all comes to an end at some point, and 300 years from now, nobody will remember you.
If that triggers you, call. No.
Yeah. But I think so like the beautiful part about that is that puts some more purpose onto how you're living the next few days of, do you want to live it in a way that is just continuing the way you have, or do you want to find a way to make it more lively, more exciting, more really?
Yeah.
And then when you come to the end of your life and they're lowering you into the ground, hopefully you're not thinking about it then, but maybe before that moment, but thinking about, okay, I've lived life in a way that feels meaningful, in a way that feels purposeful, and I didn't just waste time because it felt like it was too much.
Well, I want to speak to the potential trap of entitlement. if I get to this place, or if I had what you had, or if then maybe I can start doing this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
You can be making $1,800 a month, or you can be making $18,000 a month,
or $18
or $18 a month, whatever that looks like. And you can still make these choices and these steps to living a purposeful, meaningful life. And that's where I think we get caught up in those excuses. Well, if I were only where you were at, then maybe I can start doing this. No, like, what can you do within your world right now to make these steps? And so I don't want to give like an excuse to anybody listening,
right?
That you,
And if counseling feels like finances are the thing that's getting in the way, still reach out to us. We'd love to be able to talk with you. We also have resources on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, where we are constantly trying to give you little ways that you can start this conversation with yourself or with your friends, and then go to the library. Check out I'd start with Brene Brown. She's really excellent at lowering the threshold of what growing looks like.
Daring Greatly is probably the best place to start.
Yeah. And like I said, library, it's free.
Yep.
And there's so many opportunities for you. It's never too late to begin the process or pick back up where you left off.
Thank you for joining Candid Conversations. If you would like more information, you can email candid@mayfieldcounseling.com or call 719-452-4803.